Divisional playoff weekend is here, Packer fans, and I'm Untitled Chapter, host of Porn Other Packers podcast. Thank you for being here, and thank you for checking out this video. The Seattle Seahawks are traveling to Green Bay, Wisconsin, Sunday afternoon, 5:40 p.m. Central Standard Time to face off for a trip to the NFC Championship game. I'm here to give you some of my final thoughts, some of my two keys to victory, and an X factor, a game prediction. I got a lot to talk about. I'm very excited. It's the weekend. That means we're just 2 days away from some Green Bay Packers football. Guys, it's time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So as we get started, a special thanks to the 5 new subscribers since I posted a video on Sunday. I am creeping very close to that 1,000 subscriber threshold. It's been a slow crawl, a much slower crawl than I anticipated, but hey, there are a lot of channels out there. There's a lot of places to get Packer news. If you do subscribe at the end of the season, it was going to be 1,000 subscribers. If I don't get there, I'm not going to punish some of my faithful, loyal viewers of this show, but when the season ends, I will give away this canvas. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We're going to dive into some Packers football. And Sunday will mark the 23rd meeting between the Green Bay Packers and the Seattle Seahawks, stretching all the way back to 1976. But a fun fact for you on this one is that 13 of the last 14 games between these two teams have been won by the home team, and 7 of the last games, 7 games I suppose, between Rodgers and good old Russell Wilson have been won by the home team as well. So good thing that this game is taking place in Lambeau Field. I think there are a lot of different elements that will factor into that I'm going to get to in a second. But Sunday will also mark the 4th playoff meeting between these two teams. And if you want to talk about all-time classics, let me refresh you on the previous 3. Back in 2003, Seattle visited Green Bay once again. It was a wild card matchup. Mike Holmgren was on the sidelines, except for this time, he was the head coach of the Seahawks, and Ryan Longwell comes up short on a 47-yard game-winning field goal that would have gave them the walk-off victory. And Seattle wins that lovely coin toss, and quarterback Matt Hasselbeck says that memorable line, "We want the ball, and we are going to score." But on 3rd and 10, with about 3 minutes into overtime, Al Harris comes up with the interception. Al Harris returns it to the house, 52 yards for a game-winning touchdown. Walk-off touchdown. The first playoff battle between these two teams was born. In 2007, just a couple years later, Seattle once again visits Green Bay, this time in the divisional round, and it was Favre's last season. Brett Favre, if you have not heard of him before, it's his last season as the Green Bay Packers quarterback. So the Ryan Grant starts the game real rough. He loses 2 fumbles very early on. Actually, their 2 opening possessions they give up, and Green Bay finds themselves in an 0-14 deficit with 4 minutes into the first quarter. Not the best place to start, but however, Packers go on to score a touchdown on their next 6 possessions. And the game was fueled by a 201-yard, 3-touchdown day by Ryan Grant. Brett Favre threw up another 173 passing yards and 3 touchdowns himself. It turned into a winter wonderland with the Packers up 42-20 entering the 4th quarter, and that's exactly where the game ended. And a fun fact about that one for you is that Green Bay also was 13-3 heading into that matchup as well. The most recent game in this rivalry, or whatever you want to call it, took place in 2014. Green Bay visits Seattle for the NFC Championship, and obviously this is the most painful of these 3 games for me to recap, and probably one of the most painful losses I've ever had to endure. After 2 consecutive road losses to Seattle, at Seattle, to the Seahawks at Seattle, one of them being that epic Hail Mary play, which really sparked this whole Wilson and Rodgers rivalry. Green Bay entered this game as the underdogs, but were able to dominate the first half and enter halftime with a 16-0 lead. Russell Wilson finished the game. This is the last bright spot of this game, but Russell Wilson had himself 5 interceptions on the day, and Seattle did not get their first touchdown of the game until 4 minutes and 44 seconds left in the third quarter. It was a 19-yard pass from John Ryan off of a fake field goal, so that kind of sparked or put Seattle on the boards for the very first time in that game. Fast forward to 3 minutes and 52 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Green Bay still held a 16-7 lead. And you know what? You know what happened. Every Green Bay Packer fan knows what happened. I actually read an article about this shortly after it happened. There were like 7 things that Green Bay could have done, or of the 7 mistakes they made. If they would have just made one of these things right, they would have came away with that victory. The whole thing fell apart. We gave up some points. Brandon Bostic lost his career as a Green Bay Packers tight end because the ball was heading straight to Jordy Nelson. Overtime happened. Yada, 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 yada. This is the kind of stuff that could make a person drink. But in regards to this game, Seattle is coming off of a wild card victory last Sunday where they traveled to Philadelphia and ended up winning that game 17-9. And of all the playoff games that we watched last week, and you had the Bills and the Texans and the Titans and the Patriots, and I'm not going to list all of them, but why not? There's one more left. The Vikings and the Saints. That Eagles and Seahawks game was probably one of the least exciting of the entire weekend. Neither team really looked overwhelmingly good in that matchup, and outside of 2 really big-time catches by rookie wide receiver DK Metcalf, Seattle's offense was much maligned for most of the game. As I stated, Metcalf had a 53-yard touchdown reception where he muscled his way into the end zone, and that was midway through the third quarter. And then he had another huge 36-yard catch with 1:47 left in the game on a 3rd and 10 for Seattle that did seal the game for the Seahawks. But if you take those 2 catches away, those 2 big catches by Metcalf, he would end up finishing the game with 5 catches, 71 yards. That would have still led the Seattle wide receiving group, and it just hints at the lack of offense that Seattle was able to conjure up in that game against the Eagles. You look at Russell Wilson, who put up above average stats for the game. He went 18 for 30, 325 passing yards. He had 1 touchdown, which was that one to Metcalf, and he finished the game with an 87.7 quarterback rating. But his most alarming statistic, and if I'm a Seahawk fan, it's probably the one that I'm most worried about, or maybe I'm used to it at this point of the year. But he had 45 yards rushing on 9 carries, and that led the team in rushing. It outshined his running backs, which I will talk about right now, because Seattle was hit hard with a slew, or a flurry, if you will, of injuries throughout the season when it came to not only just the team in general, but primarily their running back group, losing all 3 of their starting running backs to injury reserve. That then prompted them to go out and sign Marshawn Lynch following a Week 16 loss to the Arizona Cardinals. And he came onto the team. He brings a lot of energy. He brings a lot of excitement. He's a character. I actually like Marshawn Lynch. I think he's a lot of fun to watch, an entertaining guy. But between Lynch and fellow running back Travis Homer, Seattle rushed for 17 yards last week on 17 carries. And if you do the math, that's 1 yard a carry. And that really typically, historically, however you want to shake a stick at it, doesn't necessarily work very well in the playoffs. To be fair, the Eagles did have the 3rd best rush defense in the league, but in 2 games, Lynch has only rushed for 41 yards on 18 carries and has since been thrusted into that starting role. Homer has only had 74 rushing yards off of 21 carries. They have no touchdowns. Seattle is severely lacking in running back talent, and that should be a concern for those of you that are cheering for the Seahawks, which I imagine a few of you are, and you're just probably blowing up my comment section right now, so take it down a notch. So it's no secret to Packer fans that our rush defense has been a concern for us throughout the regular season. I've said on this show multiple times, it's kind of been our Achilles heel as far as what makes our defense maybe a top 5 defense, is just the inability to consistently stop the run. So Green Bay finished the regular season ranked 23rd at stopping the run, giving up 120.1 yards per game. But Seattle actually sits just ahead of them, ranked 22nd in the league, giving up 117.7 yards per game. So Seattle has struggled to slow down the Eagles last week and their running game, and that's probably part of the reason when I talk about this game that took place between the Eagles and the Seahawks. It was just absolutely mind-boggling. A reference from, what is that? It's a Will Ferrell movie. Anchorman? Nope. Anchorman. But like I said, it was completely dumbfounding why Coach Doug Peterson decided or insisted to put the game into backup quarterback Josh McCown's hands. It didn't seem necessary. It seems like they could have ran the ball at will against Seattle, but that wasn't the game plan that they stuck to. And they had multiple opportunities, the Eagles did, to come away with a win in that victory. So Seattle and Green Bay's biggest weaknesses are stopping the run, but with the recent lack of production from the Seattle running back group. And then you look at the absolute emergence from Aaron Jones, who had 1,000 yards rushing this season. He had 16 rushing touchdowns. I see this game within a game favoring or being a huge advantage for the Packers as far as the running battle and the ability to stop and run and all that good stuff. In regards to possibly each team's biggest strengths, because you can't talk about weaknesses without talking about strengths, all eyes have to be looking at that turnover margin that each of these teams have been able to put up. Seattle finished third in the league with a plus 12 turnover differential, and Green Bay finished fourth in the league with a plus 11 turnover differential. But how these teams got to those differentials and those turnover margins is a little bit different and tells a little bit of a different story. Seattle's defense came up with 16 interceptions, while Russell Wilson threw 6 himself. That nets them a plus 10 in the interception side, but their second ranking in the league with 16 fumble recoveries gets overshadowed by the 14 times that they managed to cough up the ball and fumble it on the offense. So that's how you get to 10 plus 2 equals 12. Green Bay, on the other hand, finished with 17 takeaways through the air, while Rodgers only threw 4 with a net of plus 13. But their 7 fumble recoveries and their 9 fumbles that they coughed up throughout the year finishes them with a plus 11 turnover battle. So interceptions typically can be credited to the amount of pressure or pressure that the defense can put on a quarterback throughout the game. And I think that's truly where Green Bay will shine in this matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. Although Green Bay finished tied 15 with 41 sacks, it's a pretty crowded bunch at the top of that list. And I think the number one team was the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had 53 total sacks on the season. But Seattle only managed to put up 28 sacks throughout the entire regular season, and that put them in a 3-way tie for second to last when it comes to the amount of sacks that a defense was able to come up with. Their top 3 sack leaders, Rasheem Green, Quentin Jefferson, and Jadeveon Clowney, combined for a total of 10.5 sacks. Man, but if you want to get technical with it, they actually had 3 guys on their defense that tied for 3 sacks. So if you want to bring their 5 top sack leaders to the table, those 5 guys finished with 16.5 sacks. Meanwhile, in Green Bay, their top 3 sack leaders, of course, being Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, and that boy Zadarius Smith, combined for a total of 31.5 sacks. 3 guys, 31.5 sacks. That's more than Seattle's entire team was able to put up throughout that game, and it nearly doubles Seattle's top 5 performers in that pass rush. So the reason why I make a point of this is because Seattle's offensive line is seriously banged up heading into this game, with 4 offensive linemen who were starters at some point this season listed as did not participate on Wednesday's injury report, and then 3 of these offensive linemen still appeared as did not participate on Thursday's injury report. So Green Bay, on the other hand, has had a top 10 offensive line throughout the entire season. Quite possibly the best tandem at tackles with Bulaga and Bakhtiari on both sides. And then our rookie guard, I've talked about this before, but stay with me. Elton Jenkins has not given up a sack this entire season on 571 pass blocking attempts. He's been an absolute stud. Proud of the guy. I don't know him, but that's just absolutely incredible. And all signs are pointing that everyone will be healthy and active for the Green Bay offensive line heading into Sunday. So Bulaga cleared concussion protocol. He's back at practice, and Corey Linsley was a full participant in Thursday's practice after he left the Detroit game a couple weeks ago with a back injury. So a couple thoughts on my mind before I head into my 2 keys to victory and an X factor. While Green Bay gets showered just constantly because of the dip in production from Aaron Rodgers, I swear I just want to shake people, and that's probably why I'm making this hand motion right now. I want to shake people when they forget about the season that Aaron Jones has been able to put up and the brand new offensive scheme that has come along with focusing and putting an emphasis on the run. You look at Russell Wilson, on the other hand, and he's still the face of the Seattle Seahawks franchise, and let's face it, he is forced to constantly, week in and week out, this is a season-long theme, that Russell Wilson has to put the team on his back, perform at a high level, and that's the only way that this team, quite frankly, has been able to find victories throughout the year. But regardless of how you want to shake it, both teams have made plays when plays have needed to be made late in the fourth quarter, both teams have had the ability to close out games strong. When you look at games that were decided by one score or less, Green Bay was able to go 8-1 this season, which is an 89%, and then Seattle was right there with them. They went 10-2 on the season at 83%. But furthermore, one other topic that I just want to talk about real quick is that the NFL and everyone that covers it has a serious case of short-term memory loss. Everyone was riding the Packers train after they went into Minnesota, won on the road, claimed the NFC North, and held the Vikings offense to 7 total first downs. They came off a very, very short Christmas week where they had Tuesday and Wednesday off. They practiced a little bit on Thursday and Friday. They traveled to Detroit. And Detroit just consistently and historically has always played Green Bay tough when they're playing at home. You look at the Hail Mary game with Richard Rodgers. You look at Crosby last year struggling by missing 4 or 5 field goals. But meanwhile, and so that happens, and everyone starts going, okay, maybe Green Bay is exactly who we thought they were. They're just not capable of being that dominant team. But meanwhile, Seattle absolutely sputtered into the playoffs. They lost 3 of their last 4 games. They dropped from a potential number 1 seed in the NFC and finished with the 5th seed. And then they drum up a 7-point victory last week against a banged-up Eagles team who was riding their 40-year-old backup quarterback making his first playoff start. Look, I've talked a lot throughout this podcast so far, this episode so far, about how I think Green Bay matches up well in this game. I think that their run game is going to be much more effective than Seattle's run game. I think our pass rush is going to be much more effective than Seattle's pass rush. I expect Aaron Jones to have a day. I expect Aaron Rodgers to have a day. And however, anything can happen in the playoffs. Any given Sunday, any team can win. We saw this last week with the Patriots, and both the Saints and the Patriots losing their matchups, kind of being upset last week. But I don't buy all this bullshit that the Green Bay Packers aren't the better team in this matchup, and that Seattle is the hotter team, the more talented team, and the favored team in this game. Now, don't get me wrong, Green Bay has to show up on Sunday. They have to perform, and that brings me, in a roundabout way, to my 2 keys to victory and an X factor. So key to victory number 1 is to contain Russell Wilson. If Mike Pettin and the Packers defense can prevent Wilson from taking over this game, the Packers win. There's not a single doubt in my mind. Seattle just doesn't have enough weapons outside of Wilson to consistently put points up on the board. They're thin at wide receiver. Their offensive line is banged up. Their running back group is subpar, to say the best. And let's face it, Lynch has not activated beast mode since 2014. I do expect him to play better in this game. I think he has gotten consistently better in the last 2 games. I mean, there's not a huge track record there, but anything less than 100 yards rushing out of Marshawn Lynch isn't going to cut it. And I'm even talking if he comes away with a 60-yard game, a 70-yard game, that's not going to cut it for that Seattle offense. Historically, Russell Wilson's passer rating is the lowest against the Green Bay Packers than any other team that he has faced in the NFL, and his 48 sacks that he took this season is tied for number 1 in the NFL as well. So expect Green Bay to maintain the pocket, rush from the inside, deploy a spy in certain occasions to keep an eye on him at all times. And like I said, contain Russell Wilson, and it will compensate for so much of the unpredictable things that will inevitably pop up throughout the course of this game. Key to victory number 2 is to start the game fast, and I'm talking about no bye-week hangover. We just can't have it. This has been one of a common fear among those of you that join my Monday live Q&As, and it's also a fear of mine as well. And it's been nearly 2 months since the Green Bay Packers faced off against the San Francisco 49ers, but that game is still leaving a sour taste in my mouth. And Green Bay entered that game against the 49ers with an 8-2 record, a shot at owning tying or owning the tiebreaker for the number 1 seed in the NFC. They were fresh off their bye week. They came to that game completely healthy. And although we are hosting a game in the divisional round with a possibility of hosting the NFC Championship if the Minnesota Vikings can do a little bit more magic on Saturday, the record and the seeding doesn't matter. But Green Bay can't start this game soft. They can't start it slow, meek, weak, flat, like a dead bat. I don't know. I'm going off on a crazy Dr. Seuss thing right here. But they have to start fast. It's absolutely crucial for the Green Bay Packers to start fast and not look sluggish and not look lackadaisical very early on in that game. I know Lambeau Field will be absolutely rocking on Sunday. I know some of you who watch this are going to the game. Give the crowd a reason to be loud and keep that going throughout the course of the game. Force 3 and outs on defense, create turnovers, move the ball on offense, and put some points on the board and take care of business at home. I think LaFleur himself has done an absolute excellent job of keeping his guys focused and on task during this bye week. Everyone stayed in Green Bay, where typically a bye week throughout the regular season, people travel or get out of town. They had a couple days of rest, but they also had a couple days where they had 1 hour walkthrough sessions to keep their mind fresh as well. And any preventative action that could have been taken, I do believe was taken. So since we are on the topic of Mr. Matt LaFleur, so I really wanted to make a point on this one and not select a player as my X factor in Sunday's game. You could look at Kevin King and the importance of his game and his ability to shut down Metcalf. You could look at Rodgers and say that he just needs to up his game at this point now that the playoffs are around the corner. You talk about Za'Darius getting the quarterback, Jones going off and having a great running day. Jimmy Graham could even drink from the fountain of youth and actually manage to exploit the Seattle offense, just like Zach Ertz did the previous week. And then Lazard solidifying himself as the number 2 wide receiver. These are all huge X factors that I could have went for with this game. But for me, the biggest X factor heading into this Seattle matchup has to be head coach and rookie head coach Matt LaFleur. It was all the various decisions from coaches that took place on Wild Card Weekend that consistently impacted the game in a myriad of different ways. You look at the choice to kick the field goal or punt, go for it on 4th down, throw a challenge flag, the use of their timeouts, etc., etc., etc. 40-year-old and first-time head coach Matt LaFleur will be coaching in his very first playoff game. And it will be the decisions that he makes that will shape the outcome of this game and any subsequent games that should follow. I imagine that his nerves will be an all-time high, as they should be at an all-time high. But I'm excited to see how he reacts, and I'm excited to see if this team continues to rally around him. A well-coached game by Matt LaFleur is my X factor, and with that, it's game prediction time. So while compiling my notes and putting this entire video together, I realized to myself that I have never been more biased in a video in the very short life cycle of this podcast than I was for this game. And there's a lot of reasons behind it. I just think that the media is lost in some sort of purple haze when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks. I think that the Green Bay is focused. I think they are ready. I think they have more talent spread out throughout their team than the Seattle Seahawks do. They have home field advantage, which has proven historically to be a big advantage for them. Our running game has the advantage. Our pass rush has the advantage. And the only reason why pundits out there are not giving the quarterback to Aaron Rodgers being the advantage over Russell Wilson is just because of the lack of production and some of the oddities that we've seen out of Rodgers this year. But I don't think that main one is going to be the deciding factor. I think that Green Bay has too many things working in their favor heading into this game, and that will unfold throughout this game. So my score prediction for you guys, and I will take this to the grave, Green Bay 31, Seattle 13. I do see this being a rather bit of a blowout. That's not proper English, so don't Webster dictionary me on that one. God, I almost got it out nice and smooth. But Green Bay 31-13. I think that it could be close early on. There's always going to be playoff jitters that unfold, but I do expect to see some turnovers populated by the Packers defense. I expect them to win the turnover margin in this game. I expect that offense to look good, and I expect Aaron Rodgers to look better than he has throughout the regular season. It's just been kind of percolating there, marinating just in the background that Rodgers is ready to have himself a big game. So 31-13. Leave your score predictions yourself in the comment section below. And Packer fans, for the love of God, if you are a Packers fan and you're watching this video and you've hung around this long, comment down in the comment section below, because I'm sure Seattle Seahawks fans are not going to like any of the things that came out of my mouth this particular video. Like I said, I try to keep things unbiased. I look at the pros and cons from each team, but I don't know if it's the playoff hype. I don't know if it's the third beer that I have drank before I decided to start filming this, but I see this game going very well for the Green Bay Packers. Kickoff is at 5:40 Central Standard Time, Lambeau Field, Sunday evening. Kickoff temperatures are expected to be somewhere around 20 degrees, and they're actually in a winter storm warning for Saturday night, so they're supposed to get like 3 to 5 inches of snow, and people will be out there shoveling very early on Sunday morning. Thank you guys for hanging out, checking out the video. I know you're as excited as I am. Playoff football, it's been too long. It just seems like an eternity since we've been to this point. So enjoy the game on Sunday. I will go live on Monday night, hopefully to preview our matchup against the winner of that Vikings and 49ers game, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And until next time, folks, Packer fans, go Pack Go. I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.